Hello, hello. Welcome to Healthy Perspectives, a podcast that takes on current cultural and social issues through a clinical lens. Hello, hello. All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. I've got a really challenging topic for the day. I have been approached by several people over the last couple of years, and I've told you here at Healthy Perspectives, we're willing to take on the hard conversations because ignoring them doesn't make it better. And I was recently contacted by somebody again, not a new person, but for the first time, but as a reminder of like, I probably got to have this conversation. The conversation that was brought to me was more or less the way it was presented, and I understand that there's a lot of feelings when it comes to this, was how come you aren't addressing the residential treatment models? So let me give you a little background as to why this question comes to me. So right out of grad school, I did some private practice work. And within about a year or so, I started to realize I had more to give than I was able to give in that model. And I started thinking, okay, so I could go to a hospital. I could go to a residential program. I could go to do experiential work and these one-off projects. I could do seminars. There's so many avenues that I could approach. And I had previously worked in a what they call a military model structure, which was a youth challenge program. And I know not all youth challenge programs are the same. I did that because of my military experience. It made sense, and so that's part of where I discovered that I could use my gifts to help people that may not otherwise receive help. Okay. There's a little bit of history. Now I want to get into, there was a program I was a part of that ended up being a failed program. And I've been asked more or less to address it directly. I'm not going to address it directly right now today. What I'm going to do is talk about programs as a whole. There's different kinds of residential programs for teenagers. There's therapeutic boarding schools. There's boarding schools. There's the old school like CDU programs. Which are basically behavioral modification programs. There's a lot of things. Well, I don't subscribe to the behavioral modification model. And as I was looking around, I was like, ooh, there's a bunch of these models out there that are driven by this behavioral mod sort of system. And I because here's the thing, folks, this is, I'll get a little nerdy on you here. I mean, statistically speaking, behavioral mod is ineffective for the vast majority of the people. There's a small subsect where behavioral mod is a necessity for survival, to help them survive. But we're talking about people who would probably otherwise be hospitalized. I mean, you're talking about a very small subsect of those who might find themselves in a residential school setting. And I found this school that touted themselves, and I learned some things because I had no idea what was going on in the residential world. And so I just knew what would work and what wouldn't work based on what I had learned and who I am as a person. And I found one that was academically focused. They were leaning into the model of we are an elite boarding school. That's what they sold to me. And why do I say that? What I quickly learned is that most of these residential programs that you're going to encounter are selling you something that they would like to be more than they're selling you something that they are. And that's a big deal, which is why boarding schools, these therapeutic boarding schools, these boarding schools have these weird cycles of, they can actually genuinely be very effective and very good and very healthy for 5-10 years. And then they just plummet. They just fall off. And I learned that that's because, when they're only taking in the students that fit their niche, the who they want to be, they actually do really good most of the time. But when things get difficult and the ownership takes on this mentality of, well, we need more students, and so we're gonna get lax on this area. We're gonna bring in these students. It destroys the program. Her. So if they truly don't know who they are or lose their way, become ineffective very fast. So my experience, my early experience at a boarding school was at one of these schools that really said, we're going to bring in elite level students. So high IQ. That was like one of their main requirements, is you gotta be up on the IQ. So we're only bringing in the smart kids. By the time I left, that wasn't the case. They were bringing in anybody who was rich enough to pay for it. And it was really sad. Many times I took a stand saying, this is not our profile. This doesn't fit our student body. This will change our environment. Something else that I learned in these programs, there's always people who think they have all the answers. I don't know why that happens. It's really destructive. And if any of those are in the upper echelons, it's problematic in a huge, huge way. So in this particular school, which was my early years, I had only been a clinician for maybe 3-4 years when I joined this school. I had this experience of, like, they gave me freedom to do what I wanted to do, and I thought that was great because I had the opportunity to build a team, a real team. And so I got to work, and I got hyper focused because that's what I do. I focus on what's right in front of me and what's most important. And I got hyper focused on my group. And I had, between 10 and 15 kids at any given time. And I did the very best that I knew how, not always perfect, but I did the very best I knew how to serve them and their families. The very best I knew how. And there were lots of learning opportunities and growth opportunities. And there are times where I wish I could have done some things better, but I can tell you this, as a clinician, I wasn't doing anything to contribute to the harm of any of the kids that I served, but I was naive. And something that I've learned the hard way is that by focusing on my group, the ones that I was told I have responsibility to, I did not have any clue what was happening in all the other groups. And some of them were good, and many of them were not. Unfortunately, I've heard after the fact that many people were harmed. I'll give you an example of something that I rarely saw, because I believe in good and evil, right and wrong, but I look for healthy and unhealthy. And occasionally I would bump into right and wrong, like that's wrong or that's right. On one such occasion, I was told that a staff member sent a photo to another staff member on their phone. And me, being a bit of an idealist, I went, that's not okay. That's a HIPAA violation. And so I went to my supervisor and I said, this happened. And I know because one of the staff members that received it showed me. And it wasn't like a racy, terrible photo. It was a photo of two people that were, two students that were, hanging out on the couch when they weren't supposed to be hanging out on the couch. Something in the residential world that I'm not a big fan of, called bands, because bands, on rare occasions, it's actually important. If somebody's got something that's going on in their world that is going to seriously negatively impact the progress of another, we would put them on bands. That got abused, not in the sense of like students being abused, but abused as in, staff would sometimes be like, well, this is too difficult for me to manage, so I'm going to just put them on bands. And it's like, it's a lazy response. And I saw that many times. So if, all you students out there that worked directly with me, that I was not a fan of bands. I was openly not a fan of the bands process. But these two students were on bands, and a staff took a picture and then sent it to other staff. And I was like, even though that's not an inappropriate picture, that's not okay. That's not supposed to happen. So I reported it to my supervisor. My supervisor said, we'll take care of it. And I at this point, I'd been there for a few years. And so I had learned that doesn't mean it's going to get taken care of, because the things that I cared about, the things that I found value in, often got not taken care of too. And so I followed up. And I said, this is not okay. Either you need to meet with them and let them know that that's not okay, or I'm going to go talk to them, and you're going to have to deal with the recourse, because it's not going to go down. And they called a meeting with me and this other person, and the other person tried to justify it. And my supervisor said, it's really not that big of a deal. And I lost my crap. This kind of stuff, this mediocre stuff, went on a fair amount in the program that I was a part of. My initial program. I had been in programs after that, and I saw some things that were worse, and then some things that were way better. And so I know the difference now. I'm much more mature in my understanding, and my eyes are more open. Doesn't mean I see everything perfectly. I still have blind spots. But in this situation, it's one of the very few times I absolutely lost my junk on a staff. I said, this is wrong in every way. This is wrong. And if something doesn't get done, I'm going to report it. And then something happened. And so I was like, okay, they finally followed the expectations. But it should never have taken to that level. But what I also learned from that incident and others was, because I would take a stand, and this is the hard part for me, my own personal challenge with residential programming, because I was willing and did take stands like that. I found out that a lot of staff were keeping things from me. And so I would be learning things from students and having to go verify it with staff. And only if I would confront it directly would I get straight answers. Which meant, to a great extent, unfortunately, even though advocating and working with my left alone, because the staff didn't want to deal with me. They knew that I would directly confront inappropriate behaviors or actions, or whatever you want to call them. So every time that I get approached, and here's the other thing that's the most interesting to me, I've been getting approached by kids I didn't work with, that I knew, but I didn't know, if you know what I'm saying by that. Like, there was no intimate interactions with these kids that they're adults now, to be honest. And they're like, how come you don't deal with the harm that you stood by and observed? And in part, it's because I didn't observe it. Which is, a human flaw, right? I have blind spots too. And also in part because those secrets were being kept from me too, by staff. Students didn't know that I didn't know. So they didn't come to me and say, hey, we are not sure you know about this. Maybe it even happened within my group, to be honest. I'm not naive. What I know is that I treated my group with respect. I loved and cared, appropriately loved and cared for the kids that I worked with and the families that I worked with. And many of them have gone on to be very successful. Most of them, to my understanding, those that have ever reached out and said, hi, I want to give you an update. Life is going good. I got married or this or that or whatever. Most of the kids that I work with prefer to not get involved now. Maybe I inadvertently taught them that we just stay focused on our peace, on our life, on getting you out of this program and successful in the world. It's possible I inadvertently taught that message because I stay deeply focused on my kids and my families in the program. Do I think that was a bad thing? Not necessarily, especially after the fact, because I was not ever in a position to influence the rest of the program. I was never given that opportunity. I applied. There was one time I applied. But knowing what I know now, I'm actually not even surprised I didn't get it, because they probably didn't want me to have it, because they were afraid that I was going to address all the staff issues that we were having. I personally never saw any illegal activity going on. The most aggressive that I ever was, there were 2 times that I was very aggressive, where I raised my voice at kids. One time was within my group dynamic, and I worked that out with the kid. Not a big fan of verbal aggression. We had a situation, and I think one, it was a learning opportunity for me, but they were interfering with the progress of the group, and I kicked them out of the room. I said, just get out, get out, get out. And I was very loud, louder than I just demonstrated. And they got out. And then later on, we reintegrated them into the group. And I think we actually did a pretty good job with that reintegration. I owned that I am not a fan of yelling. And I apologized to my own group for that. The other incident was in the lodge in this particular program. And it was not one of my finer moments. We had a kid who was being very disrespectful to staff and to the other kids. And I lost my junk. It was beyond, it was really unhealthy. Not my version, although I didn't respond in the greatest way in the world. And here's the thing, I didn't put my hands on kids. I heard after the fact that some staff did put their hands on kids, like, meaning in any physical way at all. Like I was, I'm a hugger in my personal life. I didn't even really hug a kid. We had all kinds of things, from kids, finding out their parent had cancer to and all these things. And I would, in the event that I ever did hug a kid, I always hugged them in public where there was others around, so that it would never be looked at as an issue. That being said, I after the fact, I learned a lot of things. Now, why am I putting this out now? Because I know people will have questions. They will have comments. They will think that I'm evil and I'm terrible. They will think that I'm great and I'm good. But what I promised all along at Healthy Perspectives is that I would address the hard topics. And I have not addressed this topic. So here's what I would ask. Number one, if you've gotten to this point, thank you for listening to it all the way through. I am not an evil person. I have never intentionally hurt anybody. Like, that's just not my thing. I have been trying to live a good and healthy life. So one, thanks for getting to this point. And two, my hope is I will get some messages of areas people want me to address. Now, I can't make you do this in private. It would be my preference that you would message me privately, whether via email or whatever. If you want to do it publicly, I will probably give you a generic public response because I don't want to bring up your stuff in a public arena and do therapy in a public arena, or critique you in a public arena. Or if you want to critique me, I mean, that happens on this podcast. That's already going on. You do what you got to do. But I do want to put this out there and say that it's fair game. Let's talk about it. And it's coming from a person who really tried hard to be a service to those teens and those families. And did I do it perfectly? Like I said earlier, nope, I didn't. Did I harm anybody? No. No, I'm confident that my actions and my behaviors were not harmful. Did I always help as much as I wish I could have? 100% the answer is no. So I'm opening the floor. Please let me know your thoughts. If there's something that I can do to help people heal, I want to do that. And if this forum allows me to do that, great. But there you go, folks. Me being vulnerable, and vulnerable not because I screwed things up, because I know I was part of things that did screw things up. Not every ship we get on is going to be a great ship. So thank you for joining us. I hope this is helpful. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll see you later. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. We appreciate our audience a lot, so we give you some simple ways to track us down. Please like, subscribe, and follow all the podcasts on different platforms, but you can also email us at healthyperspectives@protonmail.com, or you can check out our website at healthy-perspectives.com/podcast. It's a backward slash. So if you want to go to our landing page, if you go to healthy-perspectives.com, you'll still find us. You just got to click on the podcast button. Thank you so much.